I guess I can start. I apologize, I don't have a printed outline for you this evening, but hopefully it will still be an encouraging look into the scriptures nonetheless. Uh, didn't know I needed an encouraging one this evening, but after Jerry's prayer, I'm glad I have an encouraging one for us tonight. At least I hope it to be encouraging, and that's the idea about it. You know, I thought, what better night to say this than tonight, seeing how we have a fellowship meal following this. You know, the fast food fellowship part of it. You know, last week, first Sundays, we get together for fellowship where we eat after morning service and then come back in. Second Sunday, we're doing fast food fellowships. Third Fridays of the month, we're doing the game or movie night, an opportunity for fellowship. And fellowship outside of just the worship service. You know, we fellowship when we come together for worship, but that is a different type of fellowship than what the focus for tonight is about. When we gather together to worship, we look at it much as we do with Acts chapter 20 and verse 7. As Paul is here, he says, on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart on the next day, spoke to them and continued his message till midnight. You know, much like in Acts chapter 2, verse 36, you know, first off, the whole day of Pentecost was the first day of the week. With it being the first day, we are gathered together to give the worship to God, but yet we go beyond that. You know, we don't stop our fellowship from that point only. We go further beyond. And that's the idea of tonight is what about our duty to each other? You know, as we gather the first day of the week, we gather together and we worship God, but do we help one another in the process as well? Even outside of our initial day of worship, you know, we have these extra times. When we look at those on our calendar, when we look at it as an opportunity, do we look at it as another item on the calendar taking up time? Do we look at it as another optional activity? Or do we look at it as something that we can focus ourselves towards and something we can take and come together to encourage one another, to uplift one another? You know, when we look at it, is why are they so important that we repeat them every month? Why do we seek out opportunities to fellowship one with another? And I think with that, it comes together to several ideas. And, you know, given more time to think about it and look at it, could find a lot more examples in the scriptures about what it says about fellowship. You know, we saw recently in Sunday morning with Abraham at the time it was Abram, before Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, where he was hospitable and fellowshipped strangers. We see several times when God would appear in his various forms or ways to people, they would take, or a messenger of his, they would be hospitable towards him and fellowship that person. Today I'm going to look at mostly just a couple examples of the New Testament. The first being, and two of these examples are coming out of the book of Luke. And this first one, Luke chapter 10, looking at the idea of Mary and Martha. When we start to look at Luke chapter 10, verse 38 through 42, we see this account where now it had happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. Martha came and welcomed Christ into her home to fellowship, to take and break bread, to be able to eat one with another with him, and to entertain Christ, to fellowship. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me." And Jesus answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, You are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen the good part, which will not be taken from her. When we stop and think about it and look at it, there's multiple lessons to learn here, but one of them I see is the point of fellowship. They are taking and inviting him in for a meal, and yes, our bodies need to be fed. We need to be able to go, but we also need to stop and think about listening and encouraging one another. What is something that Christ can give? First off, we can start with the obvious and the biggest one that there is. He gives us the Word of God, straight from the source, without any issues or complications or changes to it. He gives us what he called the bread of life. But how encouraging would it be to just sit at his feet? We're not necessarily, in this case, they're not in a worship service. They're not in anything formal. Just get together, sit down, and listen and talk to one another. How many times do we do this, especially as families, around the holidays? Do we come together and just sit as a family? Listen and swap stories back and forth about what's going on, what's happened. Does that bring encouragement into our lives? Does that take and help lift us up and give us the encouragement? Hopefully you're not encouraged by the bad joke that I hear that if you ever want to feel better about your own family, go to a family reunion and say, whew, man. Hopefully it's not that kind of encouragement. Hopefully we're able to look at it as an encouragement, as a way to reach one another. When we have small numbers here this evening, even in worship, when we have smaller numbers at game night or something else because people are traveling or other things, are we discouraged because we came? Or are we encouraged because we are here with those that are able to be and we're able to uplift one another? I could sit at home and be alone, and you get alone mighty quick sitting alone. But have someone there with you that you can talk to, you can engage with, and what happens? You get so excited. Martha was excited to have someone there to entertain, and her focus was in the kitchen. She forgot about her guest. Yes, we want to feed our guest, but yet we also want to be there with our guest. And that is what Mary chose to do, is to fellowship with Christ one-on-one and have that personal touch there. And Christ said, I will not take that away. There was something valuable in that fellowship right there. To listen to him, to be there. How encouraging would it be for Christ even? Think of all the hardships he ran into everywhere he went. He was always being hit by someone who is trying to trap him or trick him or do something. And to all of a sudden walk into a town and someone comes to you and says, come eat with us. The openness, the invitation that was there. What about as we continue in the journey of Christ and we get to another town in Luke chapter 19, first 10 verses, and we see a man who is short in stature climb up in a tree to be able to see him. I want to see this person that's coming into town. I want to know about him. I want to hear him, but I'm too short. There's too many people around. Is it easy to get discouraged when you're not able to get where you want to get? When, being short has its advantages growing up. Someone tried to put me in a headlock one time. I just lifted my arms and slipped right out of it. They couldn't catch me as easy because I was a little bit shorter. I could duck around things a little better. But when it comes to Jesus walking into the town, walking down the street, I can't see him either. Y'all are standing in front of me. Zacchaeus had this great idea to climb up into a tree. So in chapter 19, the first 10 verses, he climbed up in a tree to be able to see him. And in verse 5, when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said, Zacchaeus, make haste. Do this quickly. Come down, for today I must stay at your house. Today I will fellowship with you. Because you have sought me out, I will come to you. So he did it. In this right here, we get to the point we see where he makes haste, came down, received him joyfully, fellowshipped with him. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, he has gone to be with a guest of a man who's a sinner. There's those people that don't care about fellowship, that just care about their own egos, that only care about their own set of problems. And right now, Christ is one of their problems because the people are following him instead of us. We're the scribes, we're the Pharisees. Christ should be coming to us and asking. But that is why he sought out Zacchaeus. That is why he sought out the others. Because he said right here, we also see out of this fellowship that has occurred what happens internally. Verse 8 says, Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Lord, look, I give half of my goods to the poor. And if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold. I'm not just going to return what I took. I'm not going to give just a little bit over. I'm going to give fourfold. How much? And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost. How can we take and help anyone if we never go out to fellowship with anyone? How can we take and do anything if we always just stay closed up in our house by ourselves? When we get out, we're able to meet these people that are seeking and searching. Christ was walking and he looked up in the tree to see Zacchaeus and said, I will come and fellowship with you. In that fellowship, we get the joys that are here. Zacchaeus is renewed in his spirit. He takes and refocuses what he is doing. Do we not feel that when we get together? Do we not take and include spiritual growth as well? Even when we just do a game night or a movie night, we're not studying the Bible as a group. We're not looking and doing things that, we're not pulling out our Bibles on those nights, but are we not being encouraged? Are we not raising our spirit and giving us the ability to try to reach out to others? Before we can teach the Bible, sometimes we need to fellowship and find out what the person needs so that we can teach. Before we can just go in, Zacchaeus was there. He had a mission. If Jesus just came in and started telling Zacchaeus what he needed to hear, would that have been as effective as taking and saying, Zacchaeus, come, I will come with you tonight? The fellowship, the reaching out, the holding on to each other, not necessarily physically hand in hand if we don't want to, but the grabbing someone and helping them with the need that they have. We look to what examples we have, and we also have one in Acts. In Acts chapter 2, as we get past just the Sermon on the Mount and go into the daily living of the apostles in the early church. Think about what they did as they did this. As we go forward into what we are doing and what we are to do, once they have come in Acts chapter 2, in the final verses here, we see in verse 46 and 47, So continued daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house. They ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God, having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. Now, before this, it talked about the worship that they were in, but now it gets past the worship part and it gets to their daily living. We also see the idea of worship here, but now it gets past that. And as we see here, they continue daily in one accord, in fellowship with one another. We can't be in fellowship if we're at odds with each other. We have to be together. They were in together. Now, it was not always about eating. Okay, the 3 times that we gather together in fellowship, we eat. We get that. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be just to get together to eat. In this one, when they went into the temple, I highly doubt that there was food involved in that gathering. And I say that because Jesus just got done in his ministry at the opening of it and at the close of it, purging the temple of all injustices, of all unrighteousness, including the money changers, the animals, all of the stuff going on. So I don't think they went to the temple to have a feast. But they then also broke bread from house to house. They met with each other. They went to each other's houses. They gathered together daily to encourage one another. They also did it gladly. They were happy to do this. When we look at the idea that tonight is fast food fellowship, okay, maybe that's an easy one to go to because there's food involved. What about next Friday? Uh-oh, this is a different day of the week. It's not one of our days that we already come here on a Sunday or Wednesday. Do we still come gladly with an openness and simplicity of heart? Why are we coming? They went together gladly and simply to serve and care for the Lord and for each other. They praised God in the process. When we do gather together, even on movie night, game night, we say a prayer. We're thankful for the food that we're about to eat. We're thankful for the opportunity of fellowship, to gather together in encouragement and fun. As they continued through the process, as they did this, they also went out and did the teachings and everything else, but they see that there was another effect to this. Through fellowship, the church grows. It can grow spiritually within our own selves. We may not be large in number, but we can still be strong. We can grow. The purpose of Bible studies and of digging into the Word is to enhance our knowledge and abilities and strength, the ability to reach out to others, to help others. And then comes the teaching. Then comes the other elements that are there that are written for us to do. But if we don't ever fellowship, and the only time anyone ever sees us is that we get that reputation in the South of being a Bible beater. We take the Bible, start beating you over the head with it, saying, "This, you're doing everything wrong, this is what you need to do." That's not going to show any growth. That's not going to be helpful. That's not going to be beneficial, because what's going to happen when we get around to teaching about the idea of fellowship and love? And all we've done is point our finger and wave. And by saying that, I'm not saying that there's anyone in the room that does that. I'm just saying, as a general thing, we need to extend the arm of fellowship. The idea, I think, one of the ideas behind the game night and all these activities is to use that as a means of fellowship. It encourages one another. It also offers opportunities to reach out to those around us. There are so many benefits to the idea of fellowship. I go back to some ideas of when I used to do a high ropes course and confidence courses and low cope, is that, challenging outdoor personal activity, challenge you beyond your comfort zone. We had a certain event called a trust fall. We would stand up on a podium about this high right here. Everyone would stand beside us, put their arms out, and the person on the podium would take and fall backwards into the arms of everyone there. Guess what? If there's nobody there, where are you going to go? Straight to the floor. If there's only 2 or 3, guess what? You're still going to the floor. You need a group. You need a fellowship of people there to help support one another. If one of us falls, the others are there to catch and pick up. When one person is weak, think of this intertangling of arms. They're grabbing each other's wrists and forming a solid bond. When one side gets heavy, what can the other side do? Help. The bond of fellowship can be so much more. Jesus used this over and over. And at times, yes, he did try and pull away from the crowd, but he rarely ever did it alone. He usually pulled back with his disciples. On occasion, we need to go to God in prayer by ourselves. But in most cases, the bonds of fellowship are so much stronger than our own individually. We have a support group that can take and hold one another up. My challenge to everyone in this room, which includes myself, let us look for an opportunity this week to extend the arm of fellowship. We have the game night coming up third Friday. Let's extend that arm of fellowship and invite somebody to come. It doesn't guarantee they will, and that's not the challenge, is not to guarantee someone in the door. The challenge is let's offer the bond of fellowship beyond ourselves to somebody this week. Let's try to incorporate that each day. As we think about who is not here that could be, could we extend out that fellowship, that hand of fellowship to them? It's nothing negative about, hey, you're missing services. Let's turn the script around. We would like to see you in our fellowship. We would like to see you at the next service time. Can we encourage somebody? Can we encourage each other in the process? As we go day by day, can we take and do something to reach out to another with gladness and singleness of heart in the fellowship of God Himself? If there's anyone here that has need of the invitation, we offer it at this time. We also invite everyone after the service is completed to come down to the KFC. And as I learned in Jamaica what KFC stands for, it stands for keep from cooking. Y'all don't have to cook supper tonight. They're going to take care of it for us. Come with and let's continue the bonds of fellowship even after the worship service. But if there's a need of the invitation, we offer it now while together we stand and sing.